It was a tense Tuesday morning at the U.S. Supreme Court. The chamber, known for its solemn traditions and echoing silence, was unusually packed. On the docket, a high-profile case concerning campaign finance laws, one that had drawn the attention of politicians, pundits, and every major news outlet. Unexpectedly, Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General and current legal commentator, had been brought in by a fringe advocacy group to argue an amicus brief. How she'd ended up at the Supreme Court lectern was anyone's guess, though many suspected it had something to do with cable news ratings and an ambitious PR team. As she approached the podium in a bright pink suit, clutching a stack of papers like a last-minute high school debater, the justices raised their brows subtly. Chief Justice Roberts leaned forward. Justice Sotomayor glanced sideways. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett? She simply sipped her tea, poised but skeptical. Then Bondi began. "We are here today because freedom is under attack," she declared with the fervor of someone announcing a plot twist on reality TV. "If billionaires can't directly hand checks to candidates in velvet envelopes, then are we even a democracy?" Pause. Silence. Justice Barrett blinked, then stifled a small chuckle. "I'm sorry," Barrett said, clearing her throat. "Did you say, velvet envelopes?" Bondi nodded, totally serious. "Yes, ma'am. Velvet. The soft fabric of liberty." That's when Barrett laughed, out loud. A few stunned gasps echoed in the courtroom. Clerks exchanged wide-eyed glances. Justice Kagan lowered her glasses with a slow, amused shake of her head. Barrett, still smiling, gestured for Bondi to continue. "Please, go on," she said, eyes twinkling with disbelief. Pam Bondi, undeterred by the ripple of laughter that had spread through the chamber like a rogue breeze, straightened her spine. Her voice rose in conviction. "Yes, Justice Barrett," she continued. "Velvet envelopes symbolize the soft power of the people, the right to support leaders with luxurious intent. When we restrict campaign donations, we're not protecting democracy, we're strangling it, with polyester bureaucracy." This time, Justice Barrett didn't even try to hide it. She burst out laughing. A clear, spontaneous laugh. Not mocking, more like someone who just heard the most bizarre TED Talk opening line ever. "You'll have to forgive me," Barrett said between chuckles, her cheeks pink. "I don't believe luxurious intent is a recognized legal principle." Bondi leaned forward, gripping the podium with flair. "Maybe it should be. The Founding Fathers wore powdered wigs after all. They appreciated elegance." Now Justice Kagan had to look away, visibly smirking. Justice Gorsuch scribbled something on his notepad, perhaps a drawing, perhaps a silent prayer. Justice Thomas remained silent, though the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth suggested he was awake and entertained. Barrett composed herself but still had tears in her eyes, from laughing. "Miss Bondi," she said carefully, "are you suggesting that campaign finance regulation is unconstitutional because it limits fashion-forward philanthropy?" "I'm saying," Bondi replied, raising a finger, "that political expression cannot be limited by material or medium. Whether it's velvet, cash, or interpretive dance, support is support." There was a stunned silence. Barrett's face froze in a mixture of amazement and disbelief. Then she laughed again, longer this time, the kind of laugh you let out when you're not sure if you're in a courtroom or an improv sketch gone rogue. The courtroom had never seen anything like it. After the velvet envelope theory and the luxurious intent line, most thought Pam Bondi had peaked. But no, she was just getting warmed up. Bondi took a dramatic pause, shuffled her notes, and then leaned in with her next argument. "To truly understand the modern voter," she said, eyes locked on the bench, "we must turn to the most influential voice of political empowerment in the 21st century, Beyoncé Giselle Knowles-Carter." Justice Barrett, who had just finished dabbing her eyes with a tissue from laughing, froze mid-motion. Bondi continued, her voice rising with passion. "As Beyoncé once declared, I dream it, I work hard, I grind till I own it. Is that not the spirit of campaign finance? Shouldn't a citizen be allowed to grind till they own a senator, metaphorically speaking, of course?" A stunned silence swept the courtroom again. One of the clerks in the back dropped his pen. Even the marble walls seemed to recoil slightly. Justice Barrett's mouth fell open. "Wait," she said slowly, "are you suggesting Beyoncé supports unlimited campaign contributions?" "Not directly," Bondi replied smoothly, "but spiritually? Absolutely. Empowerment. Hustle. Economic influence. That's what campaign donations are, a hustle for democracy." Barrett stared at her, speechless. And then, tears welled in her eyes again. But this time they weren't from laughter alone. There was something else, A complex emotional cocktail of disbelief, admiration for the sheer audacity, and perhaps, somewhere deep down, the existential realization that this was the American legal system in 2025. She shook her head, muttering, "I can't believe I'm hearing this," with the faintest laugh as she wiped her eyes. Justice Alito leaned toward Roberts and whispered, "This may be the most original constitutional argument since the pizza is a vegetable debate." The courtroom held its collective breath. Cameras weren't allowed inside the Supreme Court, but if they were, this moment would have gone viral before Bondi finished blinking. Pam Bondi, sensing the room's confusion and awe, or perhaps mistaking it for respect, leaned in for her grand finale. "Your Honors," she said, voice quivering with purpose, "what I've laid out today is not just legal theory. It's a movement. A movement for velvet, Beyoncé, and financial expression." Justice Barrett, still wiping the corner of her eye, looked half ready to speak, but Bondi raised a single hand to silence the moment. "I will leave you with this," she declared dramatically, lifting her final note card like it was the Declaration of Independence. "In the words of Beyoncé, again, you know you that be asterisk 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 when you cause all this conversation. Well, today I am that be asterisk 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 asterisk. And campaign finance is the conversation." She dropped the card on the podium. Silence. Deafening silence. Then, a sound no one expected. A slow clap. Justice Sotomayor, against all odds, was clapping. 1, 2. Then stopped, realizing perhaps too late what was happening. Kagan gave her a sharp side-eye. Roberts coughed loudly. Silence returned. Justice Barrett, stunned into a strange blend of emotional exhaustion and second-hand embarrassment, finally spoke. "Ms. Bondi," she said slowly, I genuinely have no idea what just happened. But I can assure you, this transcript will be studied in law schools for decades. Possibly as a cautionary tale." Bondi smiled like she'd just closed the defense's case in Legally Blonde 3. "Then my work here is done," she said. And with that, she turned, heels echoing across the marble floor, and marched out of the courtroom as if she had just won a Grammy for Best Spoken Word Constitutional Remix. The justices sat in stunned silence. Then Barrett muttered under her breath, still smiling faintly, "God help us all." News of Pam Bondi's performance spread faster than a Supreme Court leak in an election year. By lunchtime, hashtags were trending. Hashtag Velvet Democracy. Hashtag Bondifspance. Hashtag Supremo. Cable news exploded. Fox News hailed Bondi's speech as an unapologetic defense of glamorized capitalism. MSNBC replayed Barrett's laugh on loop. Even C-SPAN saw its highest midday streaming numbers in years. That evening, Justice Barrett made an unexpected appearance at a Georgetown law symposium. "I have presided over hundreds of oral arguments," she told a stunned room of students and scholars, "but never have I heard velvet, Beyoncé, and campaign finance used in the same legal theory." I laughed. I cried. I questioned my reality. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi was doing a live interview on a conservative podcast. "I didn't go in there to be conventional," she said, sipping what appeared to be sparkling rose. "I went in there to speak truth with style." People felt that. Even Justice Barrett felt that. By Friday, late-night shows had picked it up. Stephen Colbert ran a dramatic reenactment, complete with velvet envelopes raining from the ceiling. Trevor Noah remarked, "If Beyoncé hears about this, Pam Bondi might end up in court again, but this time for lyrical slander." And then, the unthinkable happened. Beyoncé's official Instagram account posted a single-word story. Receipt high-heeled shoe crossmark. No caption. No explanation. But fans knew, the Queen had spoken. In a rare follow-up session the next week, Justice Barrett referenced the viral moment before opening the day's proceedings. "For the record," she said with a knowing smile, "this court remains committed to legal reasoning, though we now accept velvet briefs, in fabric, not format." The chamber chuckled. Even the marble walls seemed to lighten. And somewhere in D.C., Pam Bondi was already writing her next argument. Tentative title. "The Founding Fathers Wore Wigs, Why That Makes Me Right." As the Bondi-Barrett moment continued to dominate headlines, Congress couldn't resist getting involved. A subcommittee hearing was quickly scheduled under the official title, Judicial Decorum and Beyoncé, Examining the Cultural Boundaries of Supreme Court Discourse. C-SPAN labeled it, Velvet Gate. Pam Bondi was called to testify. Wearing a tailored crimson blazer and carrying a velvet clutch, Bondi sat before the House Committee on Government Oversight like a reality show finalist awaiting judgment. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leaned forward first. Ms. Bondi, she said, do you believe quoting Beyoncé in front of the Supreme Court was appropriate legal strategy? Bondi didn't miss a beat. I believe Beyoncé embodies the democratic spirit more than half the political operatives in this town. A gasp. Applause from somewhere in the back. Possibly Marjorie Taylor Greene. Then Representative Jamie Raskin raised a copy of Federalist No. 10. Can you point me to the section where Madison discusses velvet as a political necessity? Bondi paused, smirked, and said, I think it's in the footnotes. The room broke into laughter, half stunned, half entertained. Even C-SPAN ran a ticker that read, Velvet footnotes, Bondi's defense goes full theater. Meanwhile, back at the Supreme Court, Justice Barrett received a mysterious package. Inside, a limited edition Beyoncé vinyl, a velvet envelope, and a note. For your tears. PB. Barrett laughed aloud again. And this time she didn't try to hide it. In a twist no one saw coming, Harvard Law School introduced a new seminar that fall. Legal Rhetoric and Cultural References, From Velvet to Beyoncé. Required reading. Citizens United v. FEC. Lemon v. Kurtzman. And a full transcript of Bondi's Supreme Court appearance. A footnote in the syllabus reads, sometimes the courtroom isn't ready for the argument. But the internet always is. Weeks after the whirlwind that was Bondi versus Basic Logic, the Supreme Court issued an unofficial and clearly tongue-in-cheek, mock opinion, circulated quietly among clerks and later leaked to the press. Though unsigned, all fingers pointed to Justice Amy Coney Barrett herself, if not for the tone, then for the now iconic footnote referencing lyrical jurisprudence. Velvet Packet All v. Reality. Opinion of the court, unpublished, unofficial, and arguably accidental. Justice, redacted, delivering the opinion of the court. We are asked today to consider whether expressions of political support, when delivered via velvet, Beyoncé lyrics, or bold interpretive fashion choices, are constitutionally protected under the First Amendment. While creative, the petitioner's argument suffers from a fatal flaw. It's not real law. The Constitution was drafted with quill pens, not eyeliner. Though we deeply respect the petitioner's commitment to the hustle, we find no precedent, federal, state, or divine, that suggests campaign finance laws must accommodate luxury textile metaphors or pop cultural manifestos. Indeed, the court has reviewed many novel legal arguments throughout its history: the broccoli mandate, corporate personhood, the idea that pizza is a vegetable. Yet none have cited Beyoncé as a primary source. Until now. And while Lemon versus Kurtzman may have created a test, this court is not prepared to apply the Bondi test. 1. Is it velvet? 2. Is it fierce? 3. Would Beyoncé approve? That said, the court acknowledges that oral argument was unforgettable. The laughter it provoked shall echo in these marble halls for generations. And in fairness, the velvet envelope visual aid was of impressive craftsmanship. Conclusion. The petitioner's argument is denied. But the fashion? Sustained. It is so ordered. Receipt high-heeled shoe microphone. This opinion is not precedent. Please God do not cite it. Justice Gorsuch reportedly called the opinion, the most fun we've had since Scalia compared broccoli to tyranny. Justice Sotomayor added only, next time, someone quote Shakira. Months had passed since Pam Bondi's now infamous performance at the Supreme Court, but its cultural shockwaves had only grown stronger. In law schools across the country, the case had become part of legal folklore. Professors couldn't resist using it as a cautionary tale in Constitutional Law 101. What happens when rhetoric runs unchecked by legal substance? How do aesthetics, performance, and popular culture distort or enhance civic argument? At Yale, a mock trial competition featured a student dressed in full velvet regalia quoting Beyoncé's Run the World as part of their opening statement. They won. Meanwhile, Amy Coney Barrett's reputation, already known for precision and conservative jurisprudence, took an unexpected turn. She became a meme. Clips of her laughter were remixed on TikTok with trap beats and auto-tuned snippets of her saying, "Velvet envelopes?" Her subtle eye roll had become a reaction gif used by teenagers who didn't even know who she was. One viral TikTok read, POV, when someone uses Beyoncé in a legal argument and you're a Supreme Court justice trying to hold it together. Musical notes, I ain't sorry, I ain't sorry. Several lawmakers seized on the moment for their own gain. Senator Josh Hawley introduced the Preserving Judicial Decorum Act, which attempted, unsuccessfully, to ban non-legal cultural references during oral arguments. Senator Elizabeth Warren, in turn, introduced a counter-resolution entitled, Let the Court Feel the Beat, the Case for Civic Performance in Law. In committee she said, "If quoting Beyoncé gets more Americans interested in constitutional law, then maybe, just maybe, we've been doing this wrong." Cable news went into full-scale trench warfare. Fox News, Pam Bondi, patriot or pop court provocateur? MSNBC, judicial theater hits rock bottom, or finally gets interesting? ONN, Barrett's tears prove Beyoncé is a deep state tool. The Onion, Supreme Court appoints Jay-Z as amicus curiae in all future culture-related cases. In a rare closed-door event with Notre Dame law students, she admitted, "I laughed that day, but it wasn't just at Pam. I laughed at how absurdly far public discourse had wandered from anything resembling shared facts or civic understanding. But then, I cried. Because I realized, that is where we are. And we have to deal with it, not just mock it." She paused. "And also, velvet is a terrible metaphor. Let the record show that." The students laughed. But a few nodded deeply. Now a fixture on conservative talk shows and branded as a First Amendment influencer, Bondi launched her own media platform. The Velvet Docket, a mix of legal commentary, political hot takes and fashion critiques of public officials. Its tagline? Where law meets luxe. The pilot episode featured an exclusive breakdown of Supreme Court robes, who wore it best, and a segment titled, "Can You Legally Outshine a Judge?" To everyone's shock, it trended in the top 5 on YouTube that week. In a private office inside the Supreme Court, Justice Barrett sat reading a new petition. It was a lawsuit challenging the Department of Education's curriculum for excluding pop music in civic education. Filed by Bondi P. Representing the Beyoncé Constitutional Literacy Project. Barrett set the papers down, pinched the bridge of her nose and sighed. Then she smiled. "Well," she muttered, "at least it's not about velvet this time." She reached for her tea, already bracing for part 2. The fallout from the Velvet Gate Supreme Court spectacle had now transcended law and politics. It was a cultural phenomenon, a societal Rorschach test reflecting the absurdity and vibrancy of modern America. At universities across the nation, students didn't just debate legal principles anymore. They staged elaborate performances reenacting Bondi's courtroom appearance. Some even formed velvet-packed clubs dedicated to blending politics, pop culture and theatrical flair. One such student group at Stanford launched a viral campaign. Velvet Revolution, because democracy should sparkle. Their manifesto blended founding father quotes with Beyoncé lyrics, accompanied by meme-style infographics. The hashtag Velvet Revolution trended for weeks, igniting fiery Twitter debates between traditionalists and velvetists. Capitol Hill was not immune. In fact, the incident ignited a new kind of political theater. Congressional hearings became showcases for not only legal arguments but for theatrical references. During one tense hearing on election security, a freshman congresswoman took the floor and began her statement with, "Like Beyoncé said, who run the world? Votes. So let's make sure every vote counts, no velvet envelopes allowed." Some colleagues rolled their eyes. Others pulled out their phones to live tweet. Meanwhile, Senator Josh Hawley doubled down, proposing the Anti-Theatrical Discourse Act, which sought to limit extraneous cultural commentary in all federal proceedings. His bill included a clause to ban lyrical citations and costume props. The bill didn't pass. Pam Bondi's media platform, The Velvet Docket, had become a full-fledged political movement, blending legal commentary, fashion, and viral activism. The platform's defining moment came when Bondi released a video titled, "Velvet Envelopes, the New American Symbol." In it, she argued that velvet represented the softness of democracy and the strength of tradition. Her followers responded with viral videos of themselves fashioning velvet envelopes, scarves, and even face masks. The movement's merchandise line, velvet ties, jackets, and tote bags, sold out instantly, turning Bondi into an unlikely cultural icon. Inside the Supreme Court, the justices privately debated how to address this new era of pop culture-infused legal arguments. Justice Barrett, now more amused than exasperated, proposed an innovative solution. Why not allow one cultural reference per oral argument, vetted in advance? We could call it the Velvet Clause. Justice Kagan laughed. "I like that. But what happens if someone quotes Cardi B?" "Then we adjourn," Barrett replied with a smirk. The court eventually implemented an informal guideline advising judicious use of cultural references, much to the relief of clerks and stenographers. Harvard Law School's seminar on legal rhetoric and cultural references became wildly popular. The syllabus expanded to include readings on the interplay between law and performance art, memes, and social media influence. One particularly notable paper, published by a Harvard PhD candidate, argued that Bondi's argument represents a postmodern legal hermeneutic where law is not only interpreted but performed, challenging traditional notions of judicial decorum and highlighting the evolving nature of constitutional dialogue. The paper concluded that the case would be remembered as a watershed moment marking the intersection of legal practice and cultural spectacle in 21st century America. The American public remained divided. Some saw the Velvet Gate saga as a troubling symbol of the decline of serious legal discourse, worrying that it eroded the gravitas of the highest court. Others embraced it as a refreshing shakeup, a reminder that democracy is as much about storytelling and engagement as it is about statutes and precedent. Late-night comedians kept the joke alive. Seth Meyers joked, "If you ever feel your job is boring, just remember, the Supreme Court once debated velvet envelopes and Beyoncé, and it was televised on the internet anyway." Back in Washington, Pam Bondi was preparing her next move. Her new campaign, Bring Beyoncé to the Ballot. It was a grassroots effort to register voters by linking constitutional rights with pop culture enthusiasm. The campaign's slogan was simple: "If Beyoncé can run the world, you can run your democracy." Justice Barrett, watching the campaign unfold, mused to a close colleague, "I may have laughed then, but now I see, it's not just about velvet or Beyoncé. It's about making the law resonate with people's lives, even if that means a little sparkle." Years had passed since the legendary day when Pam Bondi's velvet-clad, Beyoncé-infused courtroom theatrics sent shockwaves through the Supreme Court and the nation. What began as a bizarre spectacle had grown into a defining moment in American political culture, blending law, entertainment, and activism into an unprecedented movement. In 2030, the National Archives unveiled a special exhibition titled Velvet Gate: When Law Met Pop Culture. The exhibit featured the infamous velvet envelope, video clips of Bondi's performance, and a multimedia timeline of how the event reshaped political discourse. Visitors marveled at the original velvet outfit Bondi wore, the mock Supreme Court opinion penned by Justice Barrett, now preserved as a historical curiosity, interactive displays explaining the cultural impact on law schools, Congress, and media. By this time, Velvet Gate had become part of the curriculum at every major law school. Textbooks featured chapters titled The Velvet Clause and Judicial Decorum, The Role of Performance in Legal Argumentation, Pop Culture as Political Speech, The Bondi Effect. Justice Barrett, having retired from the bench, gave a widely praised lecture at Harvard Law on the importance of balancing tradition with innovation in legal interpretation. She remarked, "If there's one lesson from Velvet Gate, it's that the law does not exist in a vacuum. It lives in the messy, colorful world of human expression, and sometimes that means embracing the unexpected." Pam Bondi, having cemented her place as a cultural icon and political influencer, had transitioned into a new role as a political strategist blending legal expertise with media savvy. Her campaign, Bring Beyoncé to the Ballot, had helped register millions of new voters, especially young people, changing the electoral landscape. In a televised interview, Bondi reflected, "I never set out to be a legal revolutionary or a pop culture phenomenon. I just wanted to make the law accessible, and if quoting Beyoncé and Velvet helped do that, then I'm proud to be a part of history." The Supreme Court had, quietly but irrevocably, evolved. In a recent landmark ruling, the court formally recognized cultural expression as a valid, though carefully regulated, element of public legal discourse. New procedural rules now allowed for a limited and respectful use of cultural references during oral arguments, an official nod to the spirit of Velvet Gate. On a crisp autumn day, the former Justice Amy Coney Barrett walked into a packed auditorium at Notre Dame, greeted by standing ovations. She smiled warmly as she addressed the next generation of lawyers. "Remember, the law is serious business, but it is also human. Sometimes, the best way to protect the Constitution is to let it dance a little." She paused, then added with a twinkle in her eye, "And maybe keep a velvet envelope handy, just in case."